Thank you all for coming. It's really exciting to be with you all here virtually today. My name is Kira Dickey, and I'm the Market Development Manager here at Perceptive. I'm excited to be your host alongside my colleague, Jonathan Olshock. Just before we dive in, a couple housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. Jonathan, did you start the recording?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. And we'll share the recording along with additional resources with everyone who registered. And we're going to wrap up the content today in about 30 minutes, but we'll have time at the end for Q&A. Feel free to drop in the chat and drop questions at any time, though. So here's a quick look at our agenda. First, we're going to discuss the benefits of peer assessment for business students and instructors. And we'll look at 3 case studies today on different types of assignments, including group projects, student discussions, and student presentations. But first, we'll put those into context with a brief overview of peer assessment in Perceptive. So like I mentioned earlier, we'll have time at the end for Q&A, but feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat throughout the presentation as well. So with that, let's get started with the benefits of peer learning for business students. When students engage in peer review, peer assessment, or team member evaluation, they develop the soft skills that employers consistently rank as the most crucial and in demand for candidates. So the first of these is critical thinking. Peer learning challenges students to think analytically by evaluating their peers' work, which exposes them to diverse perspectives. This sharpens their ability to solve problems and think critically, which are key traits that employers look for in future leaders. Secondly, communication. Through peer learning, students also practice giving criticism with tact, which involves learning how to provide constructive feedback in a respectful and helpful manner, and handling criticism with grace, understanding that resisting feedback means missing out on opportunities for growth. Like I mentioned, this is essential in any workplace environment. And finally, collaboration. Through structured peer evaluations, students learn to set team goals and hold themselves accountable and their peers accountable for their contributions to the team. And just some background, because we're going to be talking about all of these. There are several assignment types available in Perceptive. There is peer review and peer assessment. There is live presentation review, which is similar to peer review, except students don't have to submit anything, so they can review their peers live in class, and we'll talk about that more later, so I won't get too deep. Team member evaluation, which most of you are probably pretty familiar with the concept, but this is just in Perceptive, and we'll talk about this later. And then group formation, which will actually be released in the fall. So that's just like a preview for you guys. Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to mention about these assignment types? I know you're going to get into this later.
Yep, that sounds good for now.
Okay. And this is Professor Sandra Corendor from the Gies School of Business. We're going to be talking about the Gies College of Business a lot today, so I just wanted to prep you guys. Peer reviewing in Perceptive creates an opportunity for my students to practice giving and receiving feedback, a critical skill they need to develop for their careers. This exercise also helps students benchmark and self-assess to improve their own submissions. And that brings us to our first case study on the Gies College of Business. The Gies College of Business at the University of Illinois has implemented Perceptive into over 50 courses. And if you're not familiar with Gies, I have some stats about them here. They were voted one of the top 10 public business schools in the nation by US News and World Report. And since working with Perceptive, the program was awarded as the 2022 MBA Program of the Year by Poets and Quants, and still consistently ranks in the top 10. So you can see this year they're number 6. So like I mentioned, Gies got started with Perceptive a couple years back and almost immediately implemented it into over 50 courses, adding up to over 6,200 students per semester. And that's in a variety of courses at the undergraduate, MBA, and online MBA programs. For the majority of these courses, instructors were already having students work in groups, and they were doing some form of a group member evaluation through surveys or spreadsheets. So they were able to get started with Perceptive's team member evaluation, which is really just a streamlined way of doing what they were already doing that also passes back to the LMS. And Jonathan will demonstrate what this looks like in the tool in a minute. So I won't get into much detail about how this works, but I wanted to quickly mention that Perceptive Team Member Evaluation is completely customizable and has a range of evaluation options, which enabled the instructors at the Gies College of Business to drop Perceptive into their existing assignments without the need to overhaul or change any other aspects of their course. So now I'm going to pass the screen share to Jonathan, and he's going to demonstrate how the team member evaluation tool actually works in Perceptive.
Thanks, Kira. I appreciate that. So we're going to talk a little bit about Perceptive now. The two assignment types that I'll cover today in this demonstration are team member evaluation. That is where most of our business programs who use Perceptive, that's either where they get started or where all of their use is. And it's about creating more effective groups and holding them accountable for quality group work. So we're really looking to lift up the floor and also the ceiling when it comes to working with groups. So we want the students who typically wouldn't contribute are more incentivized to contribute. And then those at the top, when they know their expectations and they can see what it looks like on a rubric, they tend to work towards those top levels as well. That might be a little bit more than they would typically do. Perceptive was developed over about 20 years of research at the University of Pittsburgh. That research was funded by the organizations you see at the bottom, as well as others. And what we found is that when peer assessment is done in Perceptive, the scoring is as valid and more reliable than a single instructor grading. Now that research is around deliverables, not team member evaluation. So that's on the peer assessment and peer review side of things. It also facilitates any type of project submission. So when we're talking about that sort of peer review, peer assessment assignment type, students can submit projects, they can submit links, videos, anything to the system to be peer reviewed. And it's proven to scale at any size course. So we have some instructors that only have 5, 10, 15 people in their class in an in-person on-campus course, and they're assigning Perceptive as the homework. Or sometimes they even will do a flipped classroom where they have some peer reviews in class and then do some different things outside of class, all the way up to thousands of students. So Gies is a really good example of scale, but we have others that have even larger implementations. So this system is really designed to alleviate all of the logistical nightmares of either team member evaluation or peer review that you would have in a class, and it doesn't matter how many students you have, it'll scale to meet your needs. The other thing to mention before I jump in is our integration. So Perceptive is a OneEdTech certified partner, which means we have a certified version of an integration with all of the major LMS that are available. So these are the 4 big ones that we typically see in higher education, but we also integrate with Sakai and some other ones that aren't listed here as well. So if you're using any top 10 major LMS, Perceptive will integrate, and that way your students and your instructors will have single sign-on. You don't have to create an account in Perceptive or do anything different other than work with the system within that LMS. So single sign-on, grade passback, and group sync as well. So if you have groups that are already established in, let's say, Canvas, and you want to move them over to Perceptive to be evaluated, you can do that with a click of a button. There's no need for downloading or manually entering any students. And then any grades that are generated will pass back to your grade book as well. So it's a nice, clean integration. Students don't need to create accounts, and neither do instructors. So with that, let's jump in and take a look at our first assignment type. So the first assignment that we'll look at is from a student perspective, and this is our team member evaluation. This is for groups of students to provide feedback to one another and to their instructor about how that group activity went prior to generating the submission that they turn in for peer review eventually. This would be the screen that the students land on when they click the button or the assignment in your LMS. They come to this screen, they'll click evaluate, and then they'll have a number of different options depending on how you've set up the assignment. The first thing we'll focus on here are the group members. So this student who I'm acting as right now is already partially completed. They've provided a peer evaluation for Eddie and Barry, And now they're going to be working on the rest of their group members. So I'm going to click evaluate here. The really nice thing about the way students are evaluated in Peerceptive is it's a guided rubric-based process. So there's a lot of benefits to this on the providing side of the feedback loop, as well as students once they receive this feedback. And we'll take a look at what all that looks like at the end. But what they'll do is they'll work through a series of prompts that guides them to give feedback about this individual in their group. So right now they're reviewing Luella Gifford. And her professionalism. So they find the description that best matches her performance in the group and they select it. Then they click next. So the next criteria here is communication. Again, they find that and they click that. If you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, one of the problems with peer evaluations typically is that some groups will just give everyone 5s. And in some cases that's appropriate, but in most cases it's really not. There is some differentiation. Some folks are contributing more than others in different areas. And it also, like Kira message at the top, it signals to my group members where they can improve. So receiving this feedback is really an important part of their growth as well. But what we do here on the left-hand side is we put them on a scoreboard for each one of these criteria. So you'll notice that that moves dynamically when I change. Nothing is preventing me from giving everyone the same score, as you see here, but this relative visualization just helps students to think a little bit more granular about where their group members should score. If they think, oh, Luella was much stronger than Barry in this particular aspect of communication, they're much more likely to put some differentiation in that scoring when they see it on the scoreboard here. This rubric that I'm using now, this next one is content, knowledge, and skills, is our standard rubric that's built into the assignment. So you can just get started right away and it will be there for you. But you're more than welcome to modify it, delete it completely and put your own rubric in here. You can even have program level rubrics. That's actually one of the things that Gies does that's really powerful. Across their entire MBA program, every student that ever works in a group uses the exact same rubric for measuring how well they're contributing to that group. And so what that does is over time, they know the expectations, they know how they'll be evaluated, and they work towards those top levels of performance. And that's true across their entire MBA experience. That consistency really helps normalize what group work should look like. This is the last rating prompt. You can have any number of rating prompts like this one in your rubric, and then you can have any number of what we call commenting prompts. So this one is just giving overall open-ended feedback to Luella. I'll just put comment here for now since it's a demo, but this could be a much longer response if I were an actual student. Click next. I get the opportunity to kind of review my scores at a high level, and then I click finish. And you'll notice that now we see the scoreboard for all of the combined criteria. And it looks like Luella is tied for first. She's right there with Eddie. So that's how you would evaluate your group members. You can also evaluate yourself as a student here. So there's an option to either self-evaluate or not when the instructor sets up the assignment. So that option is available here as well. Now, that's your typical peer evaluation, is just scoring one another within the group. The other thing that you can do in Peerceptive is you can have the students evaluate how their group dynamic was more holistically. So in this case, we're asking them not how individual members did, but how effective was their group working together. And this really gives you a lot of great information. After the first assignment, let's say your course has a number of different group opportunities. You want to evaluate how is each group in the course working together. And maybe I want to switch that up after that first assignment. So this is a good rating prompt to throw in there. It also can be a way for students to communicate to the instructor that they're just not working well with this group. And so it's a nice way to just provide some feedback about the whole group effectiveness here. And then one more type of evaluation that you can include in this would be if there's a student with a specific role in that group. In this case, it was Eddie. She was the group leader. We can provide a completely separate rubric for that person that's based around their role. So in this case, it's for group leader. So we're actually leading off this one with a commenting prompt. And then we go into a rubric that's more specific to what those leadership roles. So how can I identify and implement solutions, the ability to delegate to other group members, et cetera, inclusive decision making. So all of those kind of specific traits for a group member you can have, and you could have multiple rubrics like that as well. So if you had a leader and then a liaison and someone who's taking notes, you could have all of those have separate rubrics in the system. All right, so that's how the students experience it. It's a very quick process for them. It's a very clean interface. They can get in and get out from the LMS with one click, and it really generates all this rich data without you having to manipulate groups or have to worry about surveys and documents. It's just all very clean within the LMS. You can send a score back to the LMS based on either just participation, did they complete this task, or a lot of our business programs, since they're so tuned into how well you collaborate with one another, and that's part of the skills they're teaching, they'll actually use this for a quantifiable grade where they convert these scores from the peers into a percentage score, and then that's sent back to the grade book instead of the participation grade. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go over to the instructor side. So I'm going to stop acting as this student, and I want to show you what the instructor side of this assignment looks like so you can get an overview here. So this is the process. We've created the rubric, we've published, we're now monitoring. Really nothing needs to happen while the students are performing this. And then I can also control the deadlines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this assignment early so I can show you some of these results. You can see all of your groups here. Again, these can be passed back and forth from the LMS. You can also just randomly create groups. And then, like Kira mentioned, we have a new group formation tool coming out where you can provide your students with a survey. They answer a series of questions, and then our algorithms group them according to similarities. That can be based on timing of availability, interest in certain topics, or just general multiple choice questions. All right, and then the thing I wanted to show here are the results. So you get the results at a very high level where I can see collectively how my class did in these different criteria, and then I can drill all the way down to the student level. So first we'll take a look at overall. So how did my students perform within their groups? And these are average scores across every student who was evaluated. At the top here, I can toggle this to just look at the group leaders. So how did all the group leaders do in the different areas, and then same thing for the whole group. But if I go back to group member, what we're seeing here are the rating prompts. So this is the granular breakdown. Each one of those ratings that you saw in that rubric as I was scoring, this is what that shows. You can also aggregate this data. Let's say you have some broader learning outcomes, and 3 of the rating prompts speak to learning outcome 1, and the other 2 speak to learning outcome 2. Maybe those learning outcomes have to do with, accreditation or course completion or that sort of thing. What you can do is you can tag each one of these rating prompts and then aggregate those scores into an overall learning outcome mastery percentage. Now, this is the collective. If I scroll down here, I can also do that at the individual student level. So I can see that Roderick Barber here, by the way, all these names are fictitious. Roderick Barber here, 4.5 in this area. And then over here are his learning outcome mastery. So he's at about 80% for abilities in both of those areas. So pretty consistent across the board. He's getting around a 4.0 for most of those. So that's the collective and the individualized data there. On the student side, what I'm going to show you now is actually just about to release in Perceptive. We're releasing a new student results data visualization screen. We've actually been working with University of Michigan's Ross School of Business on some of these things. They've asked for some specific features based on their program, and we just decided those suggestions were so strong that we would incorporate it into the product for everyone. And so this is what the screen will look like for students at the end of an assignment. You can hide these grades as well. So if you don't want to have this as a graded assignment, you could just hide this card from students. But what you see here is a radar graph, and each one of these points on that graph is one of those rating prompts from that rubric that I showed. And then the students have the option to overlay the class average over their score. They can also look at if the instructor goes in, the instructor can go in and give scores as well, and they can overlay that, or they can overlay their self-score as well. So it gives them a really good look at not only how they see themselves as a contributor, but how others do in the class. When we scroll down here, we can take a look at a more granular breakdown. So each one of these gives me my scores from the peers, from the individual instructors, or myself, and then a description of the prompt. So gives them a really good peek into how they performed within this. And they get this at the end of every assignment. All right, so that's the team member evaluation. Really quickly here, because I want to give Kira some time for a few more case studies, I'm going to show what the live presentations look like. So let me go to my assignments in this course. And your course can contain all of these different assignment types. It's all one cost. And we'll go over that at the end. But let's jump into this live presentation demo. So a lot of business programs have students give presentations either live, in person, or by submitting a video of themselves. Both of those can be handled very well. And what you can do in Perceptive is have a subset of the course evaluate these presentations, or especially if it's in person, a really good practice is to have the rest of the students evaluate the live presentations real time as they're giving that performance. And it really helps to activate the audience. They're no longer passive, just kind of looking at Reddit on their phones. They're actually engaged with the speaker and giving good feedback and learning by providing that feedback. And so what that looks like for a student, let me quickly jump in here to a student and show this. So similar screen, this is where they would land coming from the LMS. They've already submitted. Now, Kira mentioned at the top, students can either submit something or not. They don't have to submit for this, but they can, if they'd like, submit their PowerPoint slides ahead of time. So in this case, we did that. I can pick from any of the students in my class who are about to go present. So if Roderick's going to the front, I just pick Roderick. On the left-hand side here is Roderick's PowerPoint that he's presenting on. And then on the right-hand side, again, are commenting prompts and rating prompts, just like the other side of Perceptive. But this is basically the quality of the presentation and this material here. The nice thing about this as well is if they do submit these slides ahead of time, the students can pin their comments to the PowerPoint so they can like geolocate them within that presentation. I'm not going to have time today to go into the results of these, but it's very similar on the student side here. They get to see a granular breakdown of each one of those rating prompts in the rubric and their overall grade. And they also get scored for the quality of their peer reviewing. So if you choose to, you can give the students a grade for how well they assessed their peers. That's a really good motivating factor for students to be going through this process and putting forth their best effort. So they're not just phoning it in on the peer review. They actually get scored for the quality of their peer reviewing as well. So that was a really quick tour. We can definitely provide more information afterwards if needed, but I'm going to throw it back to Kira and let her go over a few more case studies here. You're muted, Kira.
I'm so sorry. Thanks, Jonathan. We're going to spend the rest of our time here today talking about 2 additional case studies. One of those will be Courtney Peters, which will deal primarily with our live presentations tool. And then our last case study will be on In Good Green, and we'll talk about our peer assessment tool. So this is Courtney Peters. She's from Samford University. She teaches 2 courses, an intro-level marketing course and the intermediate course that follows it. And in both courses, she uses live presentations to have students in the audience provide real-time feedback on their peers during their presentations. So as Courtney puts it, I was looking for other ways to build engagement, build learning, and to give more than just one person's opinion. It's one thing when you get feedback from one person versus 30 other people. So I was trying to figure out a way to bolster my assessment of students and strengthen it. So as Jonathan demonstrated, live presentations allow students to get immediate specific feedback on their presentations from their peers in the audience. And in Courtney's course, students are assessed on their visuals, delivery, timing, attire, and content quality of the presentation. In her intro-level course, Principles of Marketing, Courtney uses Perceptive with 2 assignments. The real-world integration presentation is the first one we'll talk about, where students choose a new or unfamiliar business or technology to present on, and they explore the business's ability to create, communicate, or deliver value. In each lecture class, 1 or 2 students present individually, with the entire class presenting once before the end of the semester. So while 1 or 2 students is presenting, the rest of the class is following along using live presentations. So this makes sure that students in the audience are paying attention to the key components of a successful presentation. And the weekly process of giving feedback to 1 or 2 students inspires students to reflect on their own presentation techniques, which helps students improve throughout the semester. And Courtney did say she usually notices students who go at the end of the semester versus the beginning are a little bit more prepared. And for their final project, students create a personal marketing plan. So this happens in a 3-step process. First, the students create the written and visual components of the marketing plans, which are then submitted into Peerceptive for peer assessment. So students have the opportunity to receive feedback from their peers and incorporate that feedback before they submit the final project. So they get to iterate and improve before they actually submit that. And then once their plan is finalized, they have a role play, which is a 3-minute mock interview with a classmate in which they practice delivering strong introductions and effectively communicating their value to a potential employer. And the rest of one classmate pretends to be that potential employer, and the rest of the class watches along and uses live presentations to provide both quantitative and qualitative feedback. As Courtney explains, live presentations allows the students to see what it looks like to walk into an interview and show confidence, have an excellent introduction, and the importance of a handshake and thanking others for their time. Stuff that we don't necessarily have the opportunity to teach every individual student. Students pick up on these skills more often when they are reviewing their classmates. Many students in Courtney's class decide to progress to the intermediate level, which is digital marketing and analytics. This builds on the skills that they learned in the principal's course. In this course, students use their previously created personal marketing plans and create a digital portfolio. So the sequence of this assignment is quite similar. They take their personal marketing plans, create the digital portfolio, like they touch it up based on the feedback that they got last time and create that digital portfolio. And then they submit it into Peerceptive again, which allows them to iterate on it again and improve it again to make that final portfolio. The final part of the assignment involves a verbal pitch. So this is not like an interview, it's more of them pitching themselves and their work. But they do present their portfolios directly to a classmate, and the rest of the class watches along and evaluates the effectiveness of their pitch with live presentations. This process simulates real-world scenarios and gives the students the opportunity to practice presenting their ideas with confidence and clarity. And students learn from the positive and negative examples in their peers' performances. So as Courtney puts it, we do a debrief at the end of the semester where I ask, what did you learn from the peer review process? What helped you? I hear it again and again from students. It made me recognize things I could do better in my presentations. And that wraps up our case study on Courtney. So we're going to finish with one more quick case study on Ingrid Green from Loyola Marymount University.
And Kira, if I could just jump in real quick. Apologies, folks, for going a little bit over today. We understand if you need to jump off because it was scheduled for 30 minutes. We will be sending out the recording. Kira has probably about less than 5 minutes left, just one more case study, and then we'll go over some final stuff here. But if you do have to leave the meeting, we understand, and we'll be sure to send out that recording.
Yeah, I am going to try to wrap this up quickly, but I do want to mention this because it features our peer assessment tool, which we haven't discussed much. I know there's some questions in the audience. So Ingrid Green teaches business ethics and sustainability. And this course requires students to reflect and form their own opinions on a variety of ethics related topics. And Green would typically use the discussion board native to the LMS. In this case, it would be Canvas, to have students share their opinions and respond to their peers. However, the interactions were often surface level, and this behavior only got worse throughout the pandemic. So this is typical discussion board post right here. Green now uses Peerceptive in place of the traditional discussion boards. So how this works is students first write a response to an in-class speaker like they would for a traditional discussion board and submit it to Peerceptive. Then 3 peers are randomly and anonymously assigned to respond to that post using Green's rubric. Students write responses that further the discussion and demonstrate their understanding. Then the student who originally submitted the discussion post responds to the comments they've received and rates the response's helpfulness and accuracy. After students both give and receive feedback, Peerceptive will display these one-to-one anonymous conversations in a chat style window for students to read and reflect on. I'm just going to quickly show you what this would look like. So this is a mock-up of the rubric. This isn't actually Ingrid's rubric, but this is a similar one. And you can see this is the commenting prompt. So students are told to summarize and then also add. And then there's the rating prompt. And it asks students to assign quantitative value to aspects of the discussion post. I quickly show you what this looks like. This is the one-to-one anonymous conversation in the chat style window. So you can see the gray bubbles are the qualitative responses from the peers to the original discussion post. And like I said, this is not from Green's course. This is from a biology course. And the gray top, the gray is the peer, and the blue is the blue shows what happens during the feedback phase. So you can see the original submitter revisited the assignment and rated the helpfulness of each response. And then they also provided feedback on why they gave that rating. And this is a quote from Ingrid. I won't spend a lot of time reading it, but it's a type of homework assignment that lends itself well to Peerceptive because there's no one right answer. They could write a reflection, but they really needed to engage in a conversation about these ideas. So that's what they're doing in this. Instead of just saying, I agree, they're actually prompted to respond further than that. And Green shared with me that because she saves time grading, she spends that time actually reading and going through the conversations between students. She said, I find it incredibly useful to see how the students are giving feedback. I read more and more of the feedback with each semester, and I gain a lot of insight from seeing what they're talking about. And that is the end of our case study. I just wanted to mention that we do have 24/7 support available to help you get started. They're US-based former educators. They have certifications in instructional design. You can meet with them by scheduling an appointment or dropping into their office hours. And they can help you add peer learning to any existing assignment or create something new, fully tailored to your course. And we've been getting questions about pricing during these webinars, so I wanted to let you know that access to Peerceptive can be purchased online or through the university bookstore directly by students for $22.50 per course. And then Peerceptive can also be licensed on a per course basis for an entire college, a department, a program, or at the university level. And many universities already have campus-wide subscriptions with Peerceptive, meaning you and your students can get started right away for free. So to find out more information about getting started, you can email us at info@peerceptive.com. And with that, I know we're over time, so thank you so much for sticking around. We appreciate you all taking time out of your summer vacations and your early start of semester to learn about peer assessment.